we will be discussing about the physical limits to the pattern of distribution of organisms. So what are the physical limits? Often a species distribution is limited by a particular factor in the environment that influences its ability to survive or reproduce adequately. So when a species cannot survive or reproduce adequately, that means it cannot spread to the other ranges or the areas, and this will affect their patterns of distribution. So what are those factors? These are physical factors such as temperature, light, wetness, and dryness. So temperature, if we see the equatorial regions of the earth, these are the areas which are with the high temperature, having the sunlight throughout the year, as well as there is high rainfall as well. And due to this factor, there are some climax communities and biomes, just like the rainforest, tropical rainforests are there, which are having the highest productivity on the planet. But as we go towards the lesser latitude, towards the polar regions, there is much less productivity, and there is the regions with like tundra, which is having very less rainfall as well as very less temperatures. And this, there are some organisms which won't survive in tundra, but they are living well in the equator. And there are some organisms which can survive in the tundra, but they cannot live on the equator as well. So the biotic factors, apart from the physical factors, there are some factors which are living in a region. They are related to the life. These are called biotic factors, such as competition, predation, parasitism, or presence or absence of suitable food. So an organism cannot go somewhere it cannot find food. A plant cannot grow inside a cave because there is no sunlight. So these are the some factors which are the competition, for example, or predation. We will be discussing all of these things in detail in the later topics. And all of these factors contribute to the niche of the organisms. The physical factor as well as the biotic factors, both of these combine, and they contribute to the niche of organism in their patterns of distribution. So there are, taking a single environmental variable, any species will have certain limits along a gradient of that factor. So take pH, take temperature. Every species has some optimal limit of that, optimum for that factor at which its population will grow most effectively. So the species are living along the ranges of these physical factors. The very less of it or very more of it, that will be affecting their distribution as well. A plant which can live in the range of 10 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius will be living in that area only. If there are some sub-zero temperature or very hot environment just like desert, those plant or animals won't survive there. So these are environmental variable. Take one environmental variable at one time and see that if that organism can live in that environment. And all of these environmental variable are physical factors that are affecting the distribution of organisms as well. So here you can see the graphic model of the population abundance maintained by a species of animal or plant along a gradient of a physical factor in its environment. So area of greater abundance will be in the middle where there is range of optimum. Lower limit of tolerance and upper limit of tolerance. As you go sideways, there will be less and less distribution of the organisms. So zone of physiological stress and there will be low population in the first lower limit of the tolerance, and in the second lower limit of tolerance there will be zone of intolerance and the species will become absent. And so is the case on the right side in the upper limit of tolerance. So zone of first there comes the zone of physiological stress, and there is low population. And as you go further in the gradient, there is more high the physiological variable, there will be zone of intolerance and species will become absent. So this is giving a bell-shaped curve, and in there the range of optimum contains the maximum number of or the population of that organism. So of all the factors that we have discussed up till here, there is often one that is particularly important, and that may be overriding in determining survival and hence distribution of the organism. And this is called limiting factor. Anything that tends to make it more difficult for a species to live, grow, or reproduce in its environment may be proved to be limiting factor for the species in that environment. So anything that affects affect the distribution of the species in such a way that it controls the presence or absence of that species in a particular area, that is the limiting factor of the distribution of that species. So any regular change or in physical or chemical condition through space thus creates a subsequent of replacement of one species by another among both animal and plants, and this is known as zonation. So there is one zone in which one particular organism is found. When the factors, the environmental factors change, that species is substituted with another species. That species is replaced by another species, and this is known as zonation. So here you can see the distribution along the river of three closely related species of amphipod crustacea relative to the concentration of salt in the water. So the Gammarus locusta, which is on the right side towards the open sea, that is living in more salty water because this is an estuary where the water of the sea is combining with the riverine water. And then there is Gammaricus zedaki, which is having less salt than the Gammarus locusta habitat. And then there is the Gammarus pulex, which is containing very less salt, and this is the organism which is living in very less salt conditions. So potential distribution of species cannot be fully understood without reference to the influence of other organisms and their respective distribution and ecological requirements. So that means we need to study the biotic factors as well, not only the abiotic factors that we have discussed up till here, but also the biotic factor, just like competition or parasitism. They are also important in the studying the distribution of organisms.